Community Television.
Wilmington Community Television presents live coverage of the 1998 State Representatives Debate. Tonight, the Democratic primary race between incumbent State Representative James Miceli and challenger Selectman Michael Newhouse. Now, live from Wilmington's Town Hall, the editor of the Wilmington and Tewksbury Town Crier, Mr. Frank Amato.
Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the debate between State Representative James Miceli and Wilmington Selectman Michael Newhouse. Both are candidates for the Democratic nomination for State Representative in the 20th District. This debate is being sponsored by the Wilmington and Tewksbury Town Crier. I am news editor Frank Amato, and I will be the moderator for the evening. The format will be as follows. There will be 8 questions total, 3 from Representative Miceli, 3 from Selectman Newhouse, which have been given to us in advance. The Town Crier will ask 2 questions. Candidates will answer in alternating fashion. Each candidate will have a 3-minute answer and a 1-minute rebuttal. Each candidate will have a 5-minute summation, continuing in that alternating format. Due to time restrictions, we would like to ask the audience to please refrain from applause until the conclusion of the debate. Both candidates are reminded that I will strictly enforce the time limits. First question to Selectman Newhouse. When I served as Selectman, and while serving as the District State Representative, I can point to specific projects and specific legislation where I was effective in preserving open space. This week, the state awarded a multi-town grant, and Wilmington was one of the towns included in this grant. When you answered the League of Women Voters questionnaire regarding this issue on open space, you did not allude to anything you had accomplished in this area. What have you done relative to preserving significant open space?
Well, I would readily admit that my record on open space is not a long one. However, I have been active in that regard as a selectman, to the extent that I have urged the town manager to see to it that an open space plan is completed in a timely fashion, which I'm confident that it will be. Certainly. Just to rehash what I just said, in my time as selectman, I do not have a long record concerning open space. However, I don't think that you can find any official around who is opposed to preserving and maintaining open space. Pursuant to that, the town of Wilmington has taken steps to formulate an open space plan which will maximize the town's ability to obtain state funds. I have in fact urged the town manager to pursue that open space plan, and I have been assured that it will be complete in due course.
Representative Miceli.
Yes, due course is a rather nebulous term. Let me tell you what I did, what I think you should have been doing. That tragedy that's about to occur on Salem Street, that construction of that multi-family unit down there in a vast wetlands shouldn't have happened. It's going to make a serious problem with the traffic. It's going to create some very serious problems for the community. But what you should have been doing, instead of just sitting back, what I did a few years ago was this. As I was sitting on that board of selectmen, I looked at a large tract of land in this community, and I acted. I got my fellow selectmen behind me. We put an article through town meeting, and we had a friendly taking for the most part, and took 154 acres of pristine, pure land and set it aside for the town as open space. When Mrs. Leiter had that land on the block, and you're a real estate attorney and you should know, you should have been consulting with her and made her an offer and purchased that property and preserved open space.
Selectman Newhouse, 1 minute.
Yes, thank you. To be perfectly honest, my priority for the last couple of years has been to lead this town and to urge the members of town meeting and the residents of this town at the ballot box to vote for a Prop 2.5 debt exclusion to bring a new school and a new public safety building to Wilmington. And quite frankly, Representative, I can appreciate what you may have done some 20-odd years ago. but I think that you are noticeably absent, and there was a complete lack of leadership on your part in the last 2 years in an effort to bring a new school and a new public safety building to Wilmington.
As usual, you're wrong, and you're incorrect, to be redundant. Can you hear me? Mr. Fiore, can you hear me? You're incorrect, and the reason you're incorrect... Yeah,
I believe that's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. Yeah, you've had it, and I was going to say that is the format.
That is the format,
That
ladies
is
and
the
gentlemen.
format.
You have the last word, Representative
You're
Miceli.
absolutely incorrect. My job was to make sure that funding would eventually be there for that school. I voted for that school. I wasn't noticeably absent. We increased that SBAB allotment, and we weren't on schools, obviously. We're on open space. That school allotment this year by the tune of $40 million. And we will increase it again next year. We're talking about open space. Land doesn't grow old. That 154 acres may have been 20 years ago, but that 154 acres is there forever, and the town owns it. And we bought that for $155,000, and we could probably have picked up that lighter land for very few dollars as it is today.
Thank you, Representative. Now a question from Selectman Newhouse for Representative Miceli. Representative, in a recent questionnaire from the League of Women Voters, you were asked a question about campaign finance reform. In response, you said, and I quote, "I would eliminate political action committee and lobbyist contributions. But if the voters were to look at your campaign finance reform reports, they would see that over the course of your 22 years in office, you have taken thousands of dollars from both political action committees and lobbyists. In addition, you have taken contribution from PACs and lobbyists from the insurance industry, where you have both an ownership stake in one insurance company and serve as director for another insurance corporation, which in fact is one of the largest in the nation and does business here in Massachusetts. Worse still, you have voted on measures at the State House which impact the insurance industry and have not filed a conflict of interest disclosure statement with either the House Clerk or the Ethics Commission. Tell me, do you think it's fair to tell voters you support campaign finance reform, but fail to tell voters that you don't abide by your own public statements? Representative.
Once again, you're incorrect. In fact, the contributions to my campaign by PACs and committees is minimal. And I would be in favor of abolishing these contributions. Absolutely. You raised $43,000 in this campaign, twice as much as I've ever seen spent in a campaign in this community. And most of your money, and I read your reports, of course, you've hired a consultant, you've got a full-time campaign manager, you've got an ad man, you hired someone to research the legislative record, something I would do on my own. Mine are minimal, but I would favor abolishing lobbyists and PAC contributions. Absolutely.
Well, Representative, just because you say I'm incorrect doesn't make it so. And I have here a list of Cigarette Association of America, Philip Morris, Deposit Insurance Fund, Life Underwriters PAC. Representative, all I'm saying is if you are going to preach not accepting PAC and special interest money, then you ought to practice what you preach.
And I'll say it to you again. Those were minimal contributions. You went back over 20 years, minimal. They were minimal contributions, and my contributions, you talk about special interest, you've got a lot of bankers on yours, are minimal, and I mean big bankers, investment bankers. And I'll say it again, I've raised $19,000, $20,000, you've raised $43,000, and it didn't come from the little people in Wilmington and Tewksbury.
Well, Representative, there you are. You're incorrect on that one because you are absolutely correct. We have raised a lot of money for this campaign, but you know what? We've raised it from working men and women, from family members, and from friends who believe that we can do better in Wilmington and Tewksbury. And of that $43-some-odd thousand, not one dime is from special interest, PACs, or unions or the like.
They're from investment banks.
Representative Miceli,
Okay.
you're out of order. Okay, next question, please. This is of or for Selectman Newhouse. Your literature and your newspaper interviews speak volumes about your alleged interest in regarding education. I have met with you in your office on Middlesex Avenue on many occasions. I have seen you at the town hall, and we have dined with other officials on at least 1 or 2 occasions. Why haven't you ever expressed your displeasure or even questioned me on the district's education programs and the state's role regarding them?
Representative, at every time and at every moment that I've served as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I have in fact attempted to work cooperatively with you, with town management, with members of the school committee, and with members of the various department heads and members of administration. The fact that I wouldn't criticize your job at a time when I might be having dinner over another affair, another issue that we were discussing, I don't think is any reflection of what you and I see as the future for education in Massachusetts, and in particular in Wilmington and Tewksbury. The fact of the matter is, sir, that when it comes to education, Wilmington and Tewksbury have not gotten their fair share. When the Educational Reserve Foundation money became available last year, that affluent town down the street, Andover, received $375,000. Wilmington received a paltry $50,000, and Tewksbury $39,000. So, sir, the discussions that we may or may not have had outside of town hall or elsewhere are irrelevant to what you and I see as the future of education in these 2 towns.
They're not irrelevant. In fact, they're very important. And I'm saying specifically, you have never, ever expressed any concern about foundation money, about reserve money, about any kind of funding relative to schools, ever. You've never discussed it with me. We've been in your office, and all of a sudden it's become an issue. Now let's talk about that foundation reserve money. I've got a letter that I'm holding in my hands, and it's from the school committee. And it says, "Dear Representative Miceli, we, the members of the Wilmington School Committee, wish to express to you our sincere gratitude for your efforts on behalf of the Wilmington Public Schools in securing the sum of $50,000 from the Foundation Reserve account. These funds will enable us to continue the much-needed improvements in our technology infrastructure. It is the essence of community spirit to see our legislative leadership working so hard on our behalf, and it's signed unanimously by the school committee." And if I have a little bit more time addressing the same situation, when they applied to that account, the pothole account, for reimbursement at that time, what happened was they were turned down. After they were turned down, I called the
Your 1 minute
commissioner.
is up, sir.
I called the commissioner.
Your 1
Met
minute
with
is
him.
up, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Representative Miceli, I am intimately aware of the circumstances of your discussions with the Commissioner. I am aware that a meeting between Bob Antonucci and the town manager was unilaterally canceled. I am aware that Wilmington was stuck with a short payoff in the amount of $50,000. And I don't care what members of the school committee thought at the time was a success, these numbers speak for themselves. Andover got the money, 100% of what they requested, with a first-term state representative. Greenfield, with a first-term state representative, got $135,000. North Reading, with a third-term Republican state representative, got $355,000. And as you can see, Wilmington and Tewksbury at the bottom of the chart. So what you may have held out as a success, and what the school committee may have thought was a success at the time, does not convince me one bit today that we were successful in securing that money.
You're distorting those facts.
I believe that's it, gentlemen.
Don't I have a minute? I do. No? Okay. I do have a
Oh,
rebuttal.
I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Okay. Yeah. You're distorting the facts, and you know better. That account wasn't handled in that fashion. That representative from Andover, and your consultant is up there, he's a client of his also, didn't make any overtures relative to that money. On this specific issue, the towns had applied. They were turned down, and I came in, I was called after the fact, and went to see the commissioner and secure those monies after the fact.
Thank you. Okay, this is for Representative Miceli. Representative, education has been one of my top priorities during this campaign, and I believe it is one of the fundamental differences that separate us. It is clear to me that when it comes to education here in Massachusetts, here in Wilmington, and here in Tewksbury, we can clearly do better. Back in 1993, it was even more obvious that we had to do something to spark a change for the better in providing a quality education for our children. And during that time in 1993, the Education Reform Act was put up for consideration and thankfully ultimately passed. If I were at the State House, I would have voted for education reform and done so enthusiastically. You, on the other hand, did not want to see education reform become a reality here in Massachusetts. You wanted the status quo to remain. When your opportunity came to support education reform, you voted not once but twice to kill education reform. During the course of this campaign, you have dismissed the votes, saying that you were concerned about education reform funding formula. But a review of your record shows that at no time during the education reform debate did you propose an alternative funding formula more to your liking. You simply voted to kill the House version of the education reform, and then you voted to kill the compromise education reform package as agreed to by the House and Senate Conference Committee. Will you please tell the parents watching tonight at home why you voted to kill education reform before it even got off the ground? Representative.
I had great company at that time. I had the chairman of Ways and Means who didn't vote for that program either. And there's a very obvious reason. We wanted to make sure the monies would be there. We voted against that formula at its inception because it related to a significant commitment of dollars. Every year since, once that formula was implemented, I've worked hard to make sure those monies were there. And they've been there every year. And you're wrong again. I did, in committee, move 4 times to amend that issue. 4 times, along with the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. So that formula works today because we've made sure the dollars are there, period.
Thank you. Selectman?
Representative, that's a nice explanation some 5 years down the road. And it seems that we are consistently getting half the story in some of the positions that you put out. With respect to education reform, you voted twice to kill that measure. If we send you back to the House of Representatives, you will do the same in the year 2000. Now, if you're telling me that you are unhappy with the formula, then with the 23 years of seniority that you have and the ability that you have to get things done that you claim, then I think it could have been done.
Maya,
1 minute.
1 minute. I say it again so you don't distort it. I've amended that 4 times in committee. Try to amend it 4 times in committee. But we've made it work. The towns, if you speak to the superintendents, are very much satisfied with what's been happening relative to ed reform because we've made sure the money is there. But you continue to distort it or change it around, but the record speaks for itself. And as far as a commitment to education, I've got a commitment and an endorsement from the education community that you don't have for obvious reasons.
Thank you, Representative. Selectman?
Well, with respect to your endorsements, Mr. Miceli, I'm not surprised at that. It's not uncommon that an incumbent of your years receives those kinds of endorsements. I tell you that I believe that I will get the endorsement of the working parents that are in this district because, sir, your record does speak for itself, and you voted against education reform, and you attempted 4 times, as you say, to amend the formula, and not successfully so. Just because the dollars have been there, you can't take credit for that.
Of course I can. Of course I can take credit for that.
Thank you very much.
Because I made sure the monies were there.
Representative, you're out of order, please. Good. Okay. Next question for Selectman Newhouse, please. I want to ask you a question about legislation procedure. Example, At the request of one of your towns, you have filed a very important bill on its behalf. The bill has had a hearing and has received a favorable committee report. It is on the calendar for debate, and you find out on the day it is to be debated that the bill has been completely reworded in committee, and in order to kill the bill, in fact, if enacted, it would accomplish the opposite of the town's request. Is that a fair representation of your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good.
Which steps do you take to correct this action?
Well, Representative, I'm not the least bit surprised that I have to address that question this evening. I'm a little bit disappointed that none of the questions have been along the lines of health care, education, or public safety. I'm also well aware...
Excuse me, we're getting off track. Could we answer that particular question, please?
And as you know, Representative, every freshman legislator goes through an intensive procedural course, is taught procedure at the House level, at the State House, and we learn that at a course usually held at Harvard University. I don't know the answer to that question, but I tell you what else. I'm the type of person that will be able to handle that because I'm the kind of person that graduated from law school, passed the bar exam, and started a law practice on my own immediately and have that law practice has flourished, and I've managed to develop a successful practice. It's really not, it's not procedure and it's not years of experience, Representative, that always counts. It's enthusiasm, it's energy, and it's leadership at home on important issues that's just as important.
Thank you. Representative?
Yes. I think I've exerted leadership. I think I've been responsive in the community, and I think I've delivered on everything I was supposed to deliver on. But if you're going in there and you don't know that fundamental, you're not going to get any intensive course. You're going to end up with legislation that doesn't do the job. So as far as my record is concerned, my record is solid. It's an excellent record. It's an excellent record in education, and everything you've done there and everything you said isn't true, and you know it.
Selectman?
I have no response to that. I made my point, Representative. If you think that one procedural question really affects one's ability to understand where working men and women come from in this district and the ability to lead and to work for those people, then you're wrong.
Representative?
Yes.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have 1 minute, don't I? Yeah, I didn't even get a chance to speak.
Charlie, he didn't have his other minute.
I've got the minute.
No, we didn't. Right.
I do have the minute. I do. I do. You know, I've heard you talk about working men and women, and I've heard you talk about the blue-collar workers. I grew up in a household. My father was a laborer. My mother was a packer at Diamond Crystal Salt Company. And I worked my way through Northeastern University and obtained a degree on my own. And yes, I'll come back to what you're talking about. You should know what the procedural votes are going to be, because it cost this town dearly. Before I got elected, I had the whole rules book down pat, and I would think my opponent did too. So it isn't a minor thing. Don't sweep it under the rug. You should be aware of it. And if you went to law school, fine. I'm not impressed, but that's fine too.
Question for Representative Miceli. Only a couple of years ago, Representative, you voted to give yourself and your colleagues a whopping $16,000 pay raise. More still, it was reported this year that you earned over $100,000 from your legislative salary combined with other work you do in the insurance industry outside of the State House. Now, I don't oppose legislators earning an outside income, providing they meet their responsibilities as a public official first and foremost. But, Representative, over the years you have failed to vote or have been absent for many votes, and not just minor votes either. You missed a budget vote which included $175 million in new education aid. You missed another budget vote which included an additional $232 million in education aid. You missed a vote on state funding of cost of living increases for retired city and town employees. You missed a significant environmental enhancement and protection measure. You missed a vote changing the funding and operation of a program which provides free hospital care for the uninsured. I think he's leading up to something here. Excuse me, I lost my place. You missed a vote changing the funding and operation of a program which provides free hospital care. I think we did that. And you missed a vote for a $486 million Massachusetts prison expansion. Representative, those are just some votes from only the past 5 years. There are even more before that. And if you missed those votes then, the voice of Wilmington and Tewksbury people was not heard on those important issues. The people of Tewksbury and Wilmington deserve to have a legislator who works full-time for them. They expect their representative to vote on all matters, not just the ones that matters to the representative. Would you please explain how you, in good conscience, can earn more than $100,000 a year, vote to give yourself a pay raise, and fail to vote on the substantial issues facing Tewksbury and Wilmington?
Yes, I'd be more than delighted to answer that. Everything I've ever done is an open record, filed with ethics, filed with campaign and political finance. In my number of years in the legislature, I've probably taken 10,000 recorded roll call votes. And I'll say this, I don't accept that at face value. I don't accept that at face value either. Not unless you show me a journal of the House. But let's assume that those are correct. Number one, I don't have an outside job. I own a business from which I derive an income, but I don't have an outside job. You couldn't work half as hard as I do. I know you. I know your style. You've sat on that Board of Selectmen. You've sat on that... You've sat in that Board of Selectmen. Here's 3 years of minutes. I can't find a motion other than seconding a motion for a block party or a common victualer's license that you've put through. I get up early in the morning, and I work very hard at my job. I've got probably one of the best attendance records in that building. If you're selecting those items, they're probably out of 1 or 2 budgets, and I may have missed a few roll calls, and may have been there for the enactment. So just don't start piling it on, because I don't subscribe to that at all. I've been in office a long time. I've got an excellent record, and I'm not going to let someone like you, who's got no record at all, has done nothing while you're on the board, who announced for this job 14 months after you were on this board, tell me about my record. You're right, but you're wrong.
Please.
I
Selectman?
think it's interesting, Representative. I've heard your comments on that issue before, and you had asked a procedural question of me. And I know that specifically in the past, you have explained the votes that you have missed were strictly procedural. That's one interesting point.
Explain all of them as being procedural.
Representative, let him speak, please.
I think it's also interesting that you presented a question concerning open space tonight. And I see here, in 1996, a vote for a $395 million environmental enhancement and protection plan, which include millions of dollars for open space. Other important votes, $175 million in education aid, absent for a vote for $232 million in education aid. And as you can see, the list goes on.
Are you done, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. 1 minute, sir.
Let me tell you, on each issue, there is more than one vote. And I don't want to go through a fundamental lesson tonight. There's engrossment, there's enactment, there's ordering to a third reading. Are those specific bills? Are those bills? Individual bills?
Depends on the vote.
No.
Please.
Are they? Are they bills?
Most of them are.
Newhouse,
Most of them are
allow
bond
him
bills,
to speak,
sir.
please.
Most of them.
Selectman
Yes.
Newhouse, you're out of
Yes,
order.
they are.
Selectman Newhouse, you're out of order.
Let me say this. You can be there on an enactment vote. You can be downstairs on a committee hearing, come back on an engrossment vote, and I would challenge everything that you've got up there, absolutely unequivocally. But knowing your consultant, he's sitting out there, this is his style. You know, they talk about slash and burn consultants. That's his style. Destroy someone's record or attempt to do so. But he's packaged you pretty well. For a guy who's got no accomplishments, who's done nothing, your brochures are beautiful. Your
Thank you very
position
much,
papers are
Representative.
terrific.
Representative, thank you. Selectman Newhouse? Please.
I have nothing further than to thank you for the compliments on my brochures.
Thank you very much. Now we have two questions from the town crier. I will address the first one to Selectman Newhouse, and that will continue on in answer format. Given that the MBTA will be building their new parking lot and train station in Wilmington Center, and there is little that the residents of Wilmington can do about that, what steps can the state representative take in the next 2 to 5 years to help beautify and help the traffic in the area, other than the current plans to widen Route 38?
Well, I think that the question itself addressed one of the answers, and that's to attend to the Route 38 project. That project has been delayed for over a year. The bid was put off several times, and after we took Representative Miceli to task for the most recent delay, it in fact was advertised and went out to bid. Now, when we actually see the work done is a whole different matter. It's similar to the Route 62 project. You mentioned that project. That's taken some 20-odd years. We need to see that project through to its completion.
Representative?
Yes. You want to respond to that, too?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yep. We're talking about a multitude of projects. That T-station project was going nowhere until I appropriated $4 million to make it move. That route they're talking about taking to task, boy, you are a fraud. That project on Route 38, and you know better. The minute the town got a call saying that the project was canceled, you ran to the newspapers, if they're going to be honest on this issue tonight, instead of calling me. I made a call to the commissioner and got that project back online. And that project is advertised, and it's going out. It's going to be funded. That project's funded. The Route 62 bridge is funded. The T-station is funded. Gee, and you always thought I did a good job in the past on these issues.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newhouse, 1 minute, please. Thank you.
Mr. Miceli, you are absolutely correct that we issued a press release and you responded and picked up the telephone and called the commissioner. I simply don't understand why it took a year to do that. And Representative, the first and second times that it was delayed, we did contact you. Through the town manager, we contacted you with no results. The only thing that got any results was political pressure.
Do I have...
Representative Miceli.
Absolutely untrue, and if I had the commissioner here today, he'd verify that. But if you think you're going to keep getting away with this with just 2 days to go, you're wrong. And I'll say this to you, that project would never have gotten off the ground without me. And I got that project going, I got that project funded, and don't get carried away. It had nothing to do with you, it had nothing to do with the game you played at the newspapers either.
Thank you very much. Now a question. Thank you. Now a question.
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Sure.
This is typical. This has been typical of this whole campaign.
Okay, out of order. Out of order, Representative. Out of order. Out of order. Representative Miceli, Tewksbury Hospital campus houses certain programs that have patients with violent histories. How would you balance patient rights with the community's right to know, given the state's sex offender registry law, which, as you know, provides for community notification?
I can only tell you what I've done. When the chief of police became alarmed relative to that issue, he contacted me. And I think he had a letter to the editor this week, in fact, last week in your paper, thanking me for all that I had done in that area. It is a delicate balance, but we've made sure that the department keeps the town and the police department notified who's housed in some of those units. We have had no serious incidents. It is a delicate balance. The police are aware of what we've done, and there have been no incidents in the community to date.
Thank you very much. Selectman Newhouse.
Do you want me to address that particular
Yes,
question?
yes, as I asked Representative Miceli to address the question I asked you.
That's right. I kind of lost my concentration when Representative Miceli was answering. So if I rehash anything he said, I apologize.
Would you like me to
Uh,
reread the question?
Actually,
please?
would you please?
Yes, I would. Tewksbury Hospital campus houses certain programs that have...
I don't need the whole question, sir, just the end.
How would you balance patient rights with the community's right to know? Given the state's sex offender registry law, which, as you know, provides for community notification. Basically what we're discussing here is several programs have very violent patients there with sex offender histories. They may be required to register with the police department.
Right.
And what I'm asking you is there is clearly an argument on both sides that the patients have rights and also that the members of the community in Tewksbury have rights to be aware of these people's presence.
Right. Certainly, with regard to individual rights, there is always an argument on each side when there are competing individual rights at stake. I absolutely support the registry that is in place for these offenders, and I would say that that is a similar situation to a buffer zone for clinics that have been threatened by demonstrators. It is a balance between the right of one group to demonstrate and exercise its freedom of speech and another group to exercise its right, or her right of choice. So what I'm saying to you is that it is a balance of individual rights and that I support that measure of, that is in place now with the registry.
Representative? 1 minute.
On this? Yeah, my record is clear. I've spent a lot of time working with the administrator at the hospital, working with the patients, making sure the care is proper, making sure the facility is funded, and there is a delicate balance, but we've maintained that area of public safety to the satisfaction of probably one of the most conscientious police chiefs in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He's very much satisfied with what we've done to the point where he sent the letter to the paper. So my record is clear on that issue.
Selectman?
I don't have any further comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we're at our 5-minute summations. Selectman Newhouse.
First of all, I'd like to thank the town crier for hosting this debate, and I would like to thank WCTV and Media One for its coverage. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my family and my friends and supporters who really have given relentless support throughout the course of this campaign. My time as a local official has been very enriching and rewarding, and with each new effort that I've worked on, whether it be to lead the effort for a new public school and public safety facility, to bring more computers into the classroom, or to reduce class sizes, or to improve the safety of our roads, it has been a rewarding experience. But I also have been frustrated. And I've been frustrated to find that more can be done on the state level. More can be done to make Tewksbury and Wilmington a better place to live. I also believe that Wilmington and Tewksbury deserve a full-time legislator, somebody who won't miss important votes on education, public safety, and health care. That's why I decided to run for state representative. And that's why I'm asking for your vote tonight, because I do believe that we can do better. That is why for the past several months, I have knocked on thousands of doors in Wilmington and Tewksbury, and that is why my family, friends, and supporters have stood with me nearly every day for the past 6 months to wave to you as you've driven by in your cars. I'm sure you believe, as I do, that Wilmington and Tewksbury are wonderful places to live. But judging from your reaction as you've driven by, I know that you agree we can do better. We can make Tewksbury and Wilmington a better place to live. We can do better when it comes to local aid. Many of the neighboring towns that are represented by less senior members in the State House have been able to increase local aid this year for their communities much greater than Wilmington and Tewksbury have. Tewksbury and Wilmington pay as much tax money to the state as any city or town, and we ought to be doing more to make sure that those dollars come back to our community. We can do better than to allow HMOs from driving sick family and friends out of the hospital, even when they're still sick. That's wrong, and we can do better. We can do better than $50,000 in educational reserve money for Wilmington and $39,000 for Tewksbury, especially when an affluent town like Andover down the street brings home $375,000. We can do better than that. Our children need us to do better so we can provide more computers in the classroom, reduce class sizes, and overall improve the quality of education in town. We can do better to help our senior citizens by completely covering the cost of prescription drugs. Unlike my opponent, I would have voted in favor of a senior's tax exemption on unearned income. It would have helped them in their later years. Unlike my opponent, I would not have voted to increase for-profit charter schools. Those charter schools put a higher premium on their bottom line than on the education of our children. I believe that we can do better. We should provide a nonprofit Horace Mann charter school for Tewksbury and Wilmington. Parents deserve to have the same educational choices in Tewksbury and Wilmington as many towns throughout the state already have, and those nonprofit charter schools should be state-funded. With all due respect to my opponent, I do believe that we should send somebody back to the State House who supports education reform. It will be too costly in the year 2000 to have somebody that votes to kill education reform. You know, the past few months have been a learning and a humbling experience for me. I've met a lot of good people, people who literally have opened the doors when I've knocked at their homes.
30 seconds left.
And they've opened their hearts to me as well. To those people who are at home, I want to take this chance to say thank you. It's really hard to describe just how encouraging it is to get a good word from you. I promise I won't let you down. I respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, September 15th, because I honestly believe that together we can do an even better job. It's been more than 20 years since we had new leadership at the State House, someone with new ideas and new energy.
Thank you very much, Selectman. Representative Miceli. Representative?
Yes, it's interesting to stand back here and listen to that rhetoric. I've been in office since 1977, and I've represented this town honestly, effectively, and I've represented this town and the town of Tewksbury with dedication. I've been effective in securing education funds. I've been effective in securing construction funds. We're rehabbing the school. I've been very active, very much involved. The two newspapers who've reviewed both our records and interviewed both of us had this to say. First, the Lowell Sun. But when a district has a representative who has served them well and who has the seniority which is the currency of Beacon Hill, they should return that representative. This is the case in this election where Rep. Jim Miceli should be returned to the legislature. Miceli is a proven leader, a proven visionary, and a lawmaker with a record that he and his constituents can be proud of. He proved during the fight for the widening of Route 3 that he has what it takes to be a regional leader of the delegation. With the exit of Ed LaLasha, we look for him joining with others in creating a strong regional delegation. The advertiser. After interviewing the candidates and reviewing their records, these are objective reviews. This isn't someone hiring a consultant, hiring a campaign manager, and putting together a slash-and-burn report that's read at a candidate's night. Miceli is the vice chairman of the Post Audit and Oversight Committee, a position that gives him access to legislative and administrative officials. He has clout and influence on Beacon Hill and throughout the state bureaucracy, something the towns cannot afford to sacrifice. The residents of Tewksbury and Wilmington would be best served by keeping James Miceli on Beacon Hill. I can drive through both these towns and look at projects and programs that I was instrumental in creating working with others in the community. These two towns mean an awful lot to me. As you drive through this town and you look at the high school, I secured almost $2 million that they had never anticipated in reform money up there relative to construction. And as I drive through Tewksbury, I look at the town common, the state hospital, which they tried closing a few years ago. I kept that going, and I've kept that funded, and we've taken care of the patients from this district. As I drive throughout that community, I go down and I see the soccer fields and the baseball fields, and you know, both superintendents think I'm doing a darn good job as far as those schools are concerned. I would ask you, there are only a few days left in this election, to really take a good hard look at our records and not what you're hearing tonight. I've taken, as I said, over 10,000 roll calls. I've helped enact many, many budgets. This year we enacted the largest tax cut in the history of the Commonwealth. We're putting together an HMO reform bill that really takes care of the needs of seniors and those who have medical problems. But more importantly, I've been there. I've made myself available relative to constituent services. People call me in the morning, they call me in the evening, and they've got some very serious and sophisticated problems, and we've helped them. Our door has never been closed, and we've done a good job of that. And I'll say this, I've got a great bunch of people working for me. My wife's been great, my daughter's been terrific, and I've got a great bunch of people, and they're all volunteers. I haven't paid anyone a dime. I haven't hired a consultant to sharpen up my image. I haven't hired a full-time campaign manager. I haven't hired someone to research someone else's record. You know, tonight I could have asked you for copies of all of that legislation, and I didn't. I've got a minute left. Let me say this. Both newspapers, very objectively, looked at both candidates in depth. After all of their research, and let me tell you, these endorsements don't come easy. And I could go on tonight with a list of other endorsements. I've always had the support of the people in this district, and I'm asking for their support again. And my elections have never been close. There have been significant endorsements and validations of my candidacy. So I'm asking you tonight to really look at both records. And I'll say it again. This is his record. 2 years of nothing. 18 months on a board, never having one significant accomplishment, and deciding he's going to run for another office, which is his right. But don't spend 6 months poking at my record and always hiding behind...
Thank you very much, Representative.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to clarify, just for audience purposes, the Town Crier as a newspaper, as a general editorial policy, do not endorse candidates. I would like to thank everybody for coming this evening.
Frank, those two papers were the Lowell Sun and the Merrimack Valley Advertiser.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much for coming, and please, everybody, come out and vote on Tuesday. Thank you very much. Have a good night.